Even amongst humanity's mightiest warriors, there are units those of transhuman status can only gaze upon in awe. During the events of the Horus Heresy and every year since, these devoted veteran warriors have dedicated their every waking hour to either breaking the backs of those who would defile the Imperium, or, for those pledged to a darker cause, to challenge mankind's greatest heroes, their decapitated skulls displayed upon spiked trophy racks for all to look upon with dismay and terror alike. Before we get started, if you do learn anything new or find yourself tuning into our content each week, go on and press the subscribe and even the notification buttons to help us in reaching 8K by Christmas. This makes sure you'll be kept up to date with all the newest lore, such as next week's release, where we detail the brand new Indomitus Crusade lore as they pierce further than they ever have before into Abaddon's domain. Sounds like nothing will go wrong. We're publishing this video in honour and at the request of Peter, you know who you are. Thanks very much for your support of the channel for the past almost year now. There exist several deeply characterful, rich warrior formations and even cultural traditions within the Thousand Sons Legion. These range anywhere from the 5 cults founded by Magnus' inner circle, the Rahati. These are the Corvidae, Pavoni, Athenian, Raptora and Pyrae. Though don't make the mistake of assuming sorceress covens were the sole distinguished specialist units within Magnus the Red's gene line. The elite formation known as the Kanatai occult, or Order of the Jackal, were warriors bearing twin Khopesh force blades whose martial aspect would see them devoting their every waking moment to martial pursuits, their own psychic might offsetting their already formidable close combat prowess. Ultimately today though, we will discuss one of the singular most recognisable formations within the Thousand Sons Legion, a brotherhood which has persevered into the 41st millennium, much diminished as it is. Now let's discuss the Sekhmet, their tale a twisted tragic one tied into the ultimate fate of the Thousand Sons. Within the current era they are more so recognisable as the Scarab occult Terminators. However, the Sekhmet were truly the epitome of all Magnus' sons strive to embody. Each brother who had the rare honour of joining the ranks of the First Fellowship, the Thousand Sons variant on chapters, were formerly known as Sekhmet. Though to earn a place among the warrior elite of the most psychically adept Astartes Legion in existence is exactly challenging as it sounds. To even be considered being invited into the First Fellowship, one must be a truly adept practitioner belonging to one of the 5 sorceress cults which lay at the heart of the Legion. For perspective's sake, without considering any mundane martial skills at arms, a Thousand Sons Marine must be able to either preordain the enemy's movements before they even know themselves, making Sekhmet masters of strategy, be capable of boiling a man's insides with the power of a warp thought, project warp-born fire from themselves, instantly damning any who lay in its path, be able to erect invisible barriers of energy to protect themselves and their brothers, or even use their formidable telekinetic skills to rip an enemy limb from limb in full view of their compatriots. Such were these abilities and much more besides on a truly staggering scale, that to begin defining the Sekhmet's more traditional weapons such as the curved Khopesh force blades or Cataphracti Terminator plate almost seems meaningless. Ultimately commanded by the now notorious Azek Ahriman, the formidable Sekhmet were responsible for guarding their Primarch in battle. It is quite possible that the Thousand Sons First Fellowship were the most powerful, deadly Astartes formation during the pre-Heresy and Civil War period. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on that. Unfortunately for the Sekhmet, even they would not escape Ahriman's folly when he cast the infamous rubric. All but the most accomplished psychically stalwart were turned to dust during the rubric of Ahriman, a tragic fate considering the accomplishments this brotherhood had achieved over centuries of battle, but perhaps an unintended boon to the galaxy's other, less psychically gifted inhabitants. Corvus Corax's sons were well versed in more conventional approaches to battlefield strategies compared to their brothers and cousins. Not ones to announce their presence in heraldic, bright colours, the Raven Guard engaged more so in clandestine strategies, heavily utilising tactics dependent upon stealth and sabotage. These, as well as assassination in the midst of battle, are all the calling cards of the 19th Legion. Though do not be mistaken in thinking that this is all which characterises Corvus Corax's sons, for they are known for their swift, coordinated, brutal execution in battle, as well as their ability to keep a calm, concentrated mind whilst in the press of war. Small squads on the hunt for key enemy targets, whilst the world around them is torn asunder. Within the Ravengard Legion was founded a small band of brothers of whose existence only the apothecaries of the 19th and Corvus Corax himself were aware of. They are the Mordai Tharn, those born on their Primarch's home world, or rather moon of deliverance, and were subsequently inducted into the Legion after the coming of the Emperor of Mankind. The remarkable trait which sets the Mordai Tharn apart from some of the best warriors in the entire galaxy is in fact the particular genome they inherited from Corvus himself during their gene seed induction process. You see, for a son of the Raven to be initiated into the ranks of this martial fellowship, he must obtain something which is completely out of his control. That is, he must inherit his Primarch's ability to shadow walk. For those unaware, Corvus Corax and only a select few of his sons were capable of manifesting this warp-born ability, the subject seeming to melt into the shadows disappearing from view, when in reality it was more of a psychically induced alteration to those bearing witness to it. The Mordai Tharn would make use of this ability through infiltrating enemy pickets or outer defences to sabotage valuable targets and assets, before, if it was so deemed by their commanders, turning their sniper rifles on the enemy, sowing confusion and sapping morale, while the main Ravengard battle line pushed forward. Unlike the Mordai Tharn, their Legion brothers within the Dark Furies were often found at the forefront of any given battle, forming a bodyguard around their Primarch whilst felling foe upon foe with their twin lightning claws. Utilising detailed reconnaissance data, a pack of Dark Furies would hunt throughout the press of battle for targets who were deemed to be of importance to the enemy. Whether they be commanders or some morale-boosting figure such as a demagogue or priest, the Dark Furies would fall upon them, shredding any who dared oppose their dark work. In this way, they were more akin to assassins than any more conventional Astartes role, conducting swift surgical strikes to both demoralise and confuse the enemy. Similarly to the Sekhmet, the Dark Furies would take to the field of battle, alongside Corvus. In the rare instances the Lord of the 19th would not simply be fighting by himself. Their ability to keep pace with their Primarch, a testament to both the Dark Furies' skill and loyalty to their gene father. Just as the warp-harnessed fury of the Sekhmet were the embodiment of Magnus' wrath, or the Mordai Tharn perhaps the truest reflection of the Ravengard's covert talents, the warriors who reflected the Sons of Horus' infamous decapitating strike were the peerless 1st Company's Justerian Terminator assault units, as well as the fearsome Reaver squads. As their name would suggest, the Reavers were characterised by the merciless butchery they were so skilled at inflicting. Ranging ahead of bulkier counterparts such as the Justerian, the fast-moving, coordinated Reaver units would pick apart enemy formations, isolating pockets of resistance to crush and reave before swiftly moving on either on foot or via jump pack. What is especially interesting regarding the Reaver formations is that they tended to operate as lone units, somewhat removed from the mainline thrust of the more common tactical squads. In this way, those especially skilled at the art of murder would be welcome among these small brotherhoods, each Reaver unit working tirelessly to rise in the esteem of their fellows within the Legion. They are perhaps the truest memory of mortal Chthonians, those mortal gangers who would strive to not only protect their own territory, but also to outdo one another. Arrogant shows of martial skills and murder counting for much among the mortals of that world. They were vicious, cold-hearted raiders who were commonly known to even harvest the flesh of their enemies to stave off hunger. Of course, legionaries within the Sons of Horus did not have to resort to such acts. However, common practices of sharpening teeth and even tattooing Chthonian runes upon them were commonplace among Horus gene sons. The Mournival as well as ARKURION are two of the Sons of Horus, and so conversely the Black Legion's, most elite command cadres. The Mournival was comprised of Horus Lupercal's most trusted lieutenants within the Crusade era, though the weight their word carried with their Primarch had mostly dissolved as the years of the Heresy progressed. Interestingly enough, only Falcus Kyber has had the singular honour of serving within both the Mournival and as ARKURION both. Horus Lupercal, prior to his ascension to the greatest Lord of Chaos within that era, would use the members of his Mournival, who were all captains of the Legion, to not only keep himself honest as well as humble, but also to act as his council of war during the great galactic campaign that was the Crusade. To ensure each of the 4 members of the Mournival provided a range of insights contrary to one another, each captain was of a particular personality type which generally clashed in opinion with the other 3. Building his inner circle in such a way ensured that Horus would always be provided with a range of varying opinions which offered foresight and thought, all the better to consider in relation to his own overarching strategy. Each of the 4 captains was encouraged to speak their mind openly, breaking down more formal barriers to forge a stronger camaraderie between not only the members of the Mournival, but also to their Primarch himself. Horus was a warrior's man, and this way of propagating martial brotherhood forged a fiercely loyal community within the Sons of Horus, each Marine possessing a dominant personality, whilst also inspiring extreme loyalty to their gene father. Likewise, within the modern era Black Legion lay the ARKURION, Abaddon's fellow founders of the Black Legion, who aided in building the initial power base responsible for bombing Canticle City from orbit, settling the score between the Sons of Horus and 3rd Legion, before assisting in uniting many fractured warbands within the Eye under Abaddon's control. Abaddon has forged a similar inner circle to the Mournival, utilising the effect of martial brotherhood mixed with intimidation to ensure his most trusted lieutenants are both respectful of their lord, though also fully aware the fate which awaits failure. There is a great deal which changes over decades, even centuries. However, the mightiest traditions in the grimdark future have persevered for millennia, not least of all the martial history and unwavering standard of the Salamander Fire Drakes. Certainly the Prometheum cult's teachings have emphasised the importance of stoicism, as well as the most common trait the Salamanders are known for, self-sacrifice. These tenets, which embody the Legion come first founding chapter, influence who of Vulcan's gene sons are accepted into the vaunted ranks of the elite First Company Fire Drakes. The trials a salamander must face to even be considered for acceptance among the Fire Drakes are secretive and harrowing in the extreme. Through those trials, as well as the teachings of the Prometheum cult, Fire Drakes become very much seldom from the rest of the chapter or Legion, whose brothers are commonly known to dwell within the various habitations on Nocturne's surface with the local populace. The Fire Drakes are forever changed, reaching a state of being as close to their Primarch as any of Vulcan's sons could hope to be. Legionaries of the 18th harness the teachings of their gene father through the Prometheum cult to transcend mere mortal, if not mundane concerns, aiding them in better understanding their own selves, together with the truest meaning of self-sacrifice. A Legion specialist formation which has persisted into the 41st millennium, the Salamander Fire Drakes are each individuals of epic deeds, a common attribute for Astartes who earn their way within their Legion's hallowed specialist ranks. They were not always utilised in a singular martial role, however, as Vulcan would disperse his vaunted Fire Drakes throughout his Legion to act as advisors and champions, those of the greatest prowess who would inspire their brothers. Fire Drakes embody the reliable, valiant personality traits their Legions and now chapter are renowned for all throughout the known galaxy. However, make no mistake in believing these noble characteristics are weakness, for in the name of the Imperium's realm and the souls they are sworn to defend, any Salamander will, without a moment's hesitation, incinerate all which stands before them, no matter the nature of the threat. Members of the Stoic Fire Drakes have distinguished themselves for the preceding 10 millennia, with well-known individuals such as First Captain Artulus Numion, battling free of the infamous Isfane 5 drop site massacre during the opening of the Heresy, as well as the current incumbent Chapter Master Tushan, having risen through the Fire Drakes' ranks before accepting this honoured mantle. Upon the field of battle they are an awesome presence to behold, bedecked in their green and black plate, wielding enormously destructive thunderhammers one-handed so as to carry an imposing storm shield in the other. When clad in Terminator armour, there is little on the battlefields of the 41st millennium which can oppose the line breakers of the Salamanders. During the Heresy, the elite first were known to also take to the field of battle in expertly crafted power armour, also often wielding a combination of power weapon and flamer to douse the hordes of arch-traitors in cleansing flame. The Iron Warriors have an incredible amount to offer when it comes to Legion specialist formations. Not all of today's units are going to be purely martial in their application. Some, such as Perturabo's Trident, were formed to fill command roles within the Legion, their persona and skills perfectly developed to harness their brother's potential on the battlefield, commanding thousands of Astartes to battle against the worst the galaxy has to offer, even eventually their own cousin legions. The Trident were in fact somewhat reminiscent of Horus Mournival, although less so a council of peers to keep their Primarch on the straight and narrow, and more so purely as a target for their Gene Father's disdain, and to of course provide overarching leadership to his sons. In the days of the Great Crusade and Heresy era, they were a trio of high-ranking Iron Warriors legionaries, who upon elevation to the Trident were then referred to as Triarch. The first instance we see of this within the Horus Heresy series is actually Kroger, who himself at the time was a simple line trooper, but when he shows initiative during the siege of the loyalist Cadmean citadel on Hydra Caudatus against the Imperial Fists, is elevated to the rank of Triarch. So we see that even though ranking officers such as warsmiths are the most likely candidates for Triarch, this, at least once, was not always the case. Compared to other more mundane formations within the 4th Legion, the famed Stor-Besarscht boasts the greatest quantity of Tyrant Siege Terminators throughout all Iron Warrior Grand Battalions. This speaks a great deal to the formidable power wielded by the Stor-Besarscht, for Iron Warrior Grand Battalions, Perturabo's adjustment to other Legions chapters, each maintained a truly frightening array of armour as well as artillery units. For an unfortunate defender to attempt to hold out just against one Grand Battalion of Iron Warriors was more often than not truly hopeless, let alone when the Legion operated en masse. Now the Tyrant Siege Terminators complemented the steady, heavy ordnance approach of the 4th Legion extremely effectively, for not only was each Marine outfitted with a Cyclone missile launcher pod, they also came equipped with a handheld Storm Bolter for cutting down infantry, as well as power fists for anything their mass reactive bolter shells wouldn't put down up close. These stalwart, grim Marines would stride towards incoming enemy fire, fortress defenders pouring everything at their disposal to lay low the indomitable threat the siege Terminators posed. Some of the Terminator elite would fall in service through such displays of contempt for their enemy, but many more would make contact with the enemy, their brother's sacrifice simply increasing their own chances of advancement within the Legion. There are truly many variations and personal modifications on standard designs within the Iron Warriors Legion, perhaps a product of Perturabo's endless need to absorb knowledge and effect efficient change within his own Legion, but also of his artistic want to create. One lesser known example is Perturabo's personal transport called the Tormentor, which is in fact a Shadow Sword chassis which has been personally modified by the Lord of Iron himself. Another example of a specialised and even personalised unit is one of which perhaps is the purest show of disdain for his son's capabilities, the bodyguard of Automata called the Iron Circle. Telepathically linked to the Primarch himself, these machines are utterly incapable of betraying their master, only failing him in death, which, armed with an Olympian bolt cannon, Carceri battle shield, and Graviton maul, is not an easy state to force upon these machines. It is no secret that the Space Wolves Legion especially hold Rabute Guilliman's Codex Astartes in contempt, and therefore employ a number of specialist ranks not found within that now ancient tome. There is one from the era of the Great Crusade and also Heresy that reminds all Russ's sons of the darkness within each of their souls. Of all the Astartes Legion units, close-knit brotherhoods who prized martial excellence above all else, there were a select few individuals in most legions whose plain, bloody urge to slaughter was considered out of line for the more surgical, considered nature of Space Marine strategies and tactics. In most legions, these brothers would be organised into formations such as the Destroyer, those who would reave the enemy so mercilessly that not even the ground they were born from could again birth life, whilst other more finessed legions such as the Raven Guard founded the Moritat. Within the ranks of the Space Wolves, however, the Death-Sworn packs were born, a precursor of sorts to the eventual genetic deviation and devolvement into Wolfen packs. The Death-Sworn were barbaric warriors who upon the field of battle would unleash their inner beast, revelling in the spilling of blood. Much akin to the World Eater Legion under the influence of the Butcher's Nails, members of the Death-Sworn were known to lose their minds in the midst of battle, the close proximity of their own deaths lingering, a sweet elixir to those affected by this rage, whilst all about them any finer tactical air was lost. Much like the Blood Angel's own Red Thirst, the Space Wolves understand this pain, choosing not to shun those affected, but rather aid them in finding absolution upon the field of battle. A glorious death fighting the enemies of the Emperor. To easily distinguish these berserkers in battle, those affected would don the wolf skull helm and artificer armour, upon which the runes of their Fenrisian faith, especially the mythos of Morkai, are engraved. Mortarian's Death Guard were the infantryman's legion. All the 14th were fluid in the skills required to fulfill different roles they could potentially be called upon to serve within during the expansion of the Emperor's realms, meaning there were not a great number of dedicated specialist units within the Death Guard's numbers. Never a proponent for showy honour guards or flamboyant warrior traditions, the pragmatic 14th eschewed all the usual trappings of other legions' honour guard units, such as gold tracery, plumage, and even the more unique exotic weaponry their cousins bore to battle. Nevertheless, none of the Emperor's sons were ignorant or arrogant enough to leave themselves open to assassination or mobbing, with Mortarion making an exception for the lack of specialist formations to employ his own dutiful bodyguard of Terminator elite, called the Death Shroud. To be purposefully singled out by your own Primarch for both valour and skill, elevated to the rank of Death Shroud, was truly a magnificent honour. However, a peculiar rite of admission existed in relation to the Death Shroud, with each Marine who was sworn into their ranks being listed as killed in action. Through such purposeful trickery were the identities of Mortarion's truest protectors kept a secret to all, even their brother legionaries outside of the Death Shroud. Now this one is quite different to all the other legions. You see, the Sagyar Mazan are an Astartes formation who exist in a state of penitence. It's quite well known now that a fair portion of the White Scars Legion chose to side with Horus instead of the Emperor, thanks in large to the pervasive influence of the warrior lodges within the Legion, formed of White Scars Marines who surrendered willingly to their Khan to accept judgment of those he did not slay. Those truly worthy of earning forgiveness were grouped into the Sagyar Mazan. These damned legionaries were dispatched upon the most hazardous missions in an attempt to grant each one clemency in death. Keshig filled the role of honour guard to the Great Khan. They were his senior commanders and even bodyguards to other commanders in the field such as chapter masters. Make no mistake, however, they were also supremely capable shock troops who bolstered the White Scars' main line when aggressively pushing toward an enemy or attempting to pierce opposing formations. They would create a way for the rest of their brothers to pour through. Soon after his discovery by the Emperor, the Great Khan would disperse those Keshig who were of Chagoran stock to seek out the White Scar pioneer companies and indoctrinate them in the Khan's ways, ready for their first meeting, as all of his far-ranging fleets slowly made their way back to Chagoras to meet their Primarch for the first time. To bear responsibility for a Primarch during the dark battlefields of the 31st millennium, a warrior must not only rise above the limits of mortal flesh, but also hone their martial skill set to such an extreme level of accomplishment that their prowess is singularly impressive, even amongst the specialised units of other Astartes legions. We speak, of course, of the Phoenix Guard, the Phoenicians' own honour guard unit, served with protecting their Primarch, fighting by his side in the thickest of close combats, but also to bear Fulgrim's personal banner aloft. To be considered for entry into this legendary unit was a great honour. You may be interested to learn, however, that the 200 strong formation were actually butchered to a man before the heresy even began in earnest. This occurred when the meddlesome Eldari Farseer Eldrad Ulthran attempted to convince Fulgrim of Horus's impending betrayal. They were raised anew, however, as they are next witnessed escorting Fulgrim when he finds himself in a similar position to Eldrad, attempting to talk around his brother Primarch Ferrus Manus to the side of Horus Lupercal in the upcoming civil war. Armed with power spears which effectively lengthened each Phoenix Guard's reach in melee, they would also take to battle within a suit of Tartarus pattern Terminator armour. Particularly favoured by their gene father, the Palatine Blades were a society within the 3rd Legion, composed of those Legion brothers of who the dexterity and skill of the duelist was most prevalent. The Palatine Blades were among the most skilled formations within any Astartes Legion. Given so many of Fulgrim's sons sought to hone their swordsmanship beyond even transhuman capabilities, this speaks volumes of those who were accepted within these hallowed ranks. Now guys, our Patreon tiers have changed in line with the poll results on our community page. The highest polling result was for Patreons to vote for video content to be shown on the channel. So we've listened, and that's going to be the cheapest entry tier at only $2, along with entry to the Patreon section of our Discord. The next tier is similar, but you also will have your name or username shouted out in every single video on the channel. Finally, the highest tier at $9.99 will net you a monthly new art piece by a well-known artist of the 40k community. These are high resolution pieces so you can print and frame them to post in your workspace, bedroom, gaming area, whatever you like. Of course, you also maintain the same perks of the cheaper tiers, so lots of value here. Now you know it's getting closer to Christmas, so if you want to purchase some new models or supplies but also support the channel and a local business, consider using our link in the description to Gap Games, where you can purchase 40k at up to 21% off Games Workshop standard prices. And of course, if you like the content and don't want to miss out on any of the new lore, such as next week's release, make sure you subscribe and even hit the notification bell. This is the easiest, zero-cost way to stay up to date with what's happening in the grimdark future. Until next week, take it easy and have a good one.